Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. My name is JL Boda and this is the Boda Life, where I share lots of encouragement and simple living. I am on a series called Candid Couch Conversations where I talk about different topics within our lives. And last time I shared our firstborn story, her name is Hadassah, and how that went. And today I'm going to share about our second child's birth story, and her name is Selah. So if you're interested in hearing more, just keep on watching. So let's get into it. First of all, I just wanted to say thank you guys so much for tuning in. And if you watched my first birth story, props to you, because that was a long one and there was a lot of details that I had to remember and go through. This one will be a lot shorter because my labor and delivery was a lot shorter. Praise the Lord. It went super smooth and just so many of my prayers were answered during this birth and labor and delivery. And so I'm going to share just a couple of details, like when I was due and some things we were praying through, to kind of give a little bit of a backstory. So I was due July 8th and I ended up being a week late with Selah. All my babies have been very cozy in there, apparently. So I was a solid week late, and I had shared in my last video how it was a positive experience, but I had a really long labor and there were some positioning problems that affected me progressing, and how we transferred from home birth to the hospital and just the disappointments that came with that and kind of my grieving process through that. So this time we really tried to be extra prepared, or just think about all the things that we didn't consider as much the first time. So going into this birth, I felt a lot more prepared. So did my husband. We had a plan moving forward. We had the same team. I felt very, very comfortable. And my last check before baby came, my midwife confirmed she's in a great position. She's in the best position for birth. And so that was so relieving to hear. And I'd also prayed that I wouldn't go super late, number one, but then I also prayed that I would just be able to just start laboring naturally and not even have to do any natural induction or any sort of intervention at all. I just wanted my body to be able to do its thing and go into labor naturally. I also was praying just for a calmness and a peace, and to really have open hands and an open heart, like I mentioned in my last video, and to be able to just give it to the Lord and pray for what I wanted, but then also trust Him if things turned out differently. So I just feel that my first birth really prepared me more mentally and emotionally the second time around to just be open to whatever happened, as long as we had a healthy baby and a healthy mama, we would be fine. And so that was just our main prayer, that labor and delivery would go smooth. I also prayed that my labor would not be as long as it was the first time. And I also prayed that preferably I would be able to start laboring or labor throughout the day, because it was very, very rough starting it in the evening and then not having sleep and having to continue laboring the next day. So all of those were things that we prayed. And before I get into the details of our birth story, I just want to say that God answered every single one of them. And I'm so, so grateful. And I just want to encourage any of you mamas out there, if you have had a disappointing first birth, even if it wasn't traumatic and it was positive, give your cares and your concerns to the Lord, or write them down or journal, and really have open hands and open heart to just allow your birth to happen the way that it needs to be, and not focus on the control, because that doesn't help us labor either. If we have this tension, if we have this this control battle while we're also trying to breathe and let things go and let labor start, and we're in this fight or flight mode, it really affects that. And I just want to encourage you too, that if you've had a birth that has been disappointing or didn't turn out the way that you expected, just continue to do your research, continue to educate yourself, and I would encourage you to try again. I think so many times births don't go the way we imagine the first time, because first time births are very hard and they're usually long for first time moms. And it can be so discouraging when other people say, oh, you know, just go the same route, or don't try to do a home birth again, or they, you know, scare you, or they make you feel fearful about different things that can happen. And I just want to encourage you to pray and to talk with your spouse and really decide what the Lord has for you guys and for your birth, and to not let other opinions get into your head or to sway you too much, because I'm so glad that we decided to try again. And I really felt that the birth of our second child was very redeeming for me. I felt that everything that I had prayed for and everything that I had hoped and everything that I wanted for my first birth happened in my second birth. And it was just so encouraging. It was also very, very empowering. I felt very uplifted. And I know that's not the case for everyone, but I'm so glad that I didn't listen, one, to the lies of the enemy, and two, to any negative feedback or doubts, which thankfully I didn't get a lot of that from other people, and that my husband and I decided to try again. I'm so glad that we decided to try again. So that would be my encouragement to you, is if your first birth doesn't go the way that you expected it to, don't be afraid to try again. And if your second birth or, you know, births after that, again, don't happen the way you envisioned it, try to stay positive and to pray and give it to the Lord, and know that you are doing a great job, and that birth is hard regardless of how you choose to birth and how your birth ends up going. A healthy baby and a healthy mama is the most important thing at the end of the day. And I think we need to put more emphasis on that rather than emphasizing all of the other details. So I just want to say that encouragement. And now I'm going to get into our birth story and when everything started to happen. So I remember my first contractions starting between, I think, 4 and 4:30 in the morning. It was around 4 in the morning when I got my first contraction. And I always wait a little bit to see, okay, is this the real deal? Is this a Braxton Hicks? Because unlike my first, as I said in my previous video, I had a couple of contractions that I could talk through that weren't very intense, and then it was bam, just very, very intense labor. And so this one was so much better because I did have that, which is another answered prayer, that gradual build of intensity like it is supposed to happen in labor. So I was very, very grateful for that. And I just remember my husband was still sleeping. It was really early in the morning. And I was like, I'm just going to labor on my own. I'm not going to wake him up because I want to make sure that he gets as much rest as he can, because I don't know how long this is going to go. And I don't want both of us to be exhausted. I was really trying not to get excited, or just in my head, I was trying to rest and lay down as much as possible. And so I did that for a little bit, but once my contractions start, it's really hard for me to rest and relax. And I've also found that with my first labor as well as my second, if I lay down, it really slows things down. And so even though I like the rest, I also want things to progress, and I wanted to meet the baby. So I was just trying to move. I did a lot of squatting, and then maybe around 5 or 6 in the morning, I wasn't very vocal. I'm not usually vocal when I'm laboring. My husband woke up and just saw that I was out of the bed. And so he asked me, like, has it started? And I was like, yeah. He's like, when did it start? So I told him, and I was like, but you just rest. I'm just gonna, keep laboring. I want you to get rest. And I think I had already texted my mother-in-law, because they live a couple of streets up from us, which is such a blessing, just to give her a heads up and let her know that things were happening. And she's also a school teacher, so she was off during the summer. So she already had a heads up, and she wakes up really early. She wakes up usually around 5 a.m. anyway. So she had a heads up. I also texted my family, hey, pretty sure labor has started, just please pray. We texted a lot of people to just pray, mainly our families and close friends. And so I just remember laboring. We let our little one sleep until she usually wakes up around 8 or 8:30. Then my mother-in-law came and picked her up, and I was laboring in the room, and my husband got everything ready that she needed. And it was such a blessing because I'm so grateful that my in-laws are close. It was just really nice to know that we had my in-laws a couple streets up, that my daughter was comfortable with them. She loves being with them. And I could labor knowing that she was safe and that she was going to be well taken care of. So my mother-in-law picked her up about 8:30 a.m. in the morning. I'm continuing to labor. Then I probably get dressed, or I don't know what I did. I'm trying to hydrate and eat a little bit at this point. I'm not big into eating when I don't feel good, so I was mainly just trying to hydrate. So I remember us going outside just around the house. I really didn't feel comfortable walking around the neighborhood and working through contractions with people looking at me. So we just kind of walked in our back like patio sidewalk area until about maybe 11:30 or lunchtime. And then I remember wanting to come in and things starting to pick up. And my husband at that time started blowing up it's like a big inflatable tub just in our living room, and started filling it with warm water because I wanted to start laboring in the water. And so this is around maybe lunchtime, 1 o'clock. I'm starting to feel a little bit tired, but not as fatigued. And I'm just praying, like, Lord, please just don't let this be a long labor. Anything would be better than 38 hours, but please, under 24 would be wonderful. And so I just remember wondering, when should I call my midwife? And I had also given her a heads up as well, this at the same time in the morning that I gave my mother-in-law a heads up. So she already knew, but I told her I still feel comfortable with laboring. I don't need you to come yet. And that's something that I learned differently from my first. My first, I felt very insecure and afraid and felt much more comfortable with her being there from the start. This time it was gradual. It wasn't as intense. I had a good couple of hours, basically the whole morning, from about 4 in the morning till lunchtime, 1 o'clock, labored that whole time without them because things were just gradually picking up. And then I remember, I think it was around 2 p.m. in the afternoon where I started to feel things becoming a lot more intense. And I vividly remember asking her, when should I call you to come? Because again, my contractions sometimes would be really far apart and then short and then close together. They always were a lot farther apart than other people that I knew when they were starting to progress and get close and getting closer to transition. I never had contractions that were right on top of each other. They would get spaced out, sometimes 3 minutes, sometimes 4 minutes, even when it came time to push. And so I remember asking her, when should I ask you to come? And she just said, you can ask me to come when you feel much more comfortable moving forward in labor with me being here than if I wasn't here. If that's hindering your progress, then I will come. I thought that was a really good piece of advice for myself. And so around 2 p.m., I definitely started to feel more uncomfortable with progressing in labor without her there. And so I called her and I said, I would really like you to come now. And I'm so glad that I did. This is another word of encouragement. Moms, trust your gut, trust your instinct. I call it mom gut, mom instinct. You know your body, you know your baby. If you're starting to feel uncomfortable, vocalize what you need because it makes a difference. And I just listened to my body and how I felt. I didn't feel safe continuing to labor with just me and my husband without her being there. And I'm so glad that I called her at around 2 p.m. because by the time they arrived, it was around 2:30. And let me tell you, it was not far away from when our daughter ended up coming. So that's something I look back on and I'm very, very grateful for. And so they ended up coming. At this point, I'm laboring in the water and time progresses on. Things are getting more intense. And like I said, I'm not a very vocal person during labor. I do start to have more moans and kind of groans and having to vocalize and really breathe and kind of bear down in a sense towards the end of it. And that was something I really tried to focus on in my second labor versus my first. My facial expression and my body was a lot more tense. I wasn't as relaxed. I didn't breathe through things as well as I could have. And so this time I really just like tucked my head under, and I would get into a squat position. I would rock back and forth, and I would really take deep breaths in and out and breathe through the contraction. And it helped so much. And I made sure as well to move in between contractions and not just stay in the same position. And so we're getting close to maybe 3:30 and things are picking up. There's, signs of labor progressing and the baby's starting to come. The midwives are checking the heartbeat. I don't think we did any cervical checks with my second birth, but things are progressing. And so then I don't remember when I started pushing, but something I'll never forget, because I talked to my sister-in-law who also planned on doing a home birth and had a successful home birth with her firstborn. And I just asked her, I'm scared of and intimidated of the pain of not having an epidural, of what everything's gonna feel like. How will I know when I need to push? Because I was pushing the first time and I definitely wasn't ready. My body wasn't ready to push. I thought it was. And she just told me, you will know. And that's very hard to understand as a first-time mom, but she was right. She's like, you will know when your body needs to push, because you will not be able to do anything else. You won't be able to hold it back. It will just literally push your baby out on its own. And that's exactly what happened. And she also said, she said to me, I thought that the labor pains were much more painful than when it came time to push. And some people might think that sounds crazy, but she was right again. I felt when it came time to push, it was a relieving time, not necessarily a painful time. The contractions were very intense, were very painful to me, but when it came time to push, I was so ready. And it was so relieving to be able to do that and just let my body do its thing. And so I don't remember when I started pushing. It could have been probably, I think, close to 4 p.m. I didn't push for very long, but I just vividly remember going through a contraction and feeling like there wasn't anything else that I could do but push. And my body just did it on its own. And that was a really relieving time. But I also remember just what you get to this point where you wonder, can I do this? And so my midwives called my husband over and they're like, she needs your support. And so I'm in a squat position in the birthing tub and he's holding me underneath the arms. And I don't even remember what I said, but I was just like, oh, I just need you to pray or just something, because it was getting really intense. And I felt so much pressure, not knowing that baby was coming. And so I just remember, and this might sound crazy to a lot of people, but I just remember it felt so relieving to be able to start pushing. And I remember pushing her head out in one push. And I just, in that moment in my head, I didn't think so much about the discomfort or the pain or the intensity. I just thought, wow, that wasn't as bad as I thought it was gonna be. Praise the Lord. I was surprised, I guess, that her head, just came out in one push. I thought, am I gonna feel, tearing? Is it gonna be this, horrible pain like we see in the movies? And it wasn't that at all. It definitely was intense, but I just remember pushing her head out, reaching down and feeling her full head of hair, and then waiting for the next contraction. And so everything went smoothly, But because my contractions were still not close enough together, my midwife started to get a little nervous about me staying in the water because my daughter's face started to turn purple. And so I just remember her telling me, JL, I need you to get out. And it's kind of a blur. She just told me, I need you to stand up and I need you to get out. And that's what I did. And my husband said that was pretty wild to observe. I won't get into all of the graphic details about that. But I just remember standing up and stepping out of the birthing tub, and the midwife and her assistant are just amazing because they had, I mean, obviously they do this for a living, but they just had everything prepared close to the birthing tub, you know, pads and sheets so that nothing would be soiled. And my midwife told me to get on hands and knees and to push because she didn't want any blood vessels or there to be any damage at all with the baby because the pressure was making her turn purple. And so she wanted me on hands and knees, more of my fanny in the air, which is not very glamorous, to relieve that pressure. So I just remember that being the most intense moment of the birth because she also had to help baby out. I'm not sure if I think her shoulders got a little bit stuck from what I remember. She was just a thicker girl than my first, who was really tiny. She was 6 pounds, 5 ounces. And so I remember her telling me to push. And at the time too, we also had Airbnb guests staying with us for 2 weeks. And I was just like, Lord, I'm not that vocal of a laborer, but I would really like for them to not be here when it comes time to push. And he answered that prayer because my husband had checked the cameras, and right when it came time to push, I remember him telling me, he's like, hey hun, the guests aren't here, so if you need to be vocal or if you need to do whatever you need to when pushing, you're good to go. And that was so freeing for me because I do remember being a little bit more vocal. I didn't scream or anything like that, but I was just kind of like, oh, like we need to get this baby out. And so my midwife is saying push, and I'm like trying to push. And I just remember, I don't know how many pushes it took. I know her head was 1 and her body might've been 1 or 2 within, I don't know how long of a time. It's kind of a blur right now, but I just remember her body finally coming out. And I don't know who caught her, but she was between, underneath my stomach, between my legs, and she just laid there. And I remember too, the midwife saying that sometimes when you birth or things are a little bit intense, you don't always scoop your baby up right away. And I was like, that's crazy. Like, who doesn't want to grab their baby right when they birth? But that was me. I just needed a moment because it was so intense. Not that I wasn't excited to hold her, but I just remember needing a moment like, oh, she's out. We did this. It was successful. There was nothing wrong. It was positive. All my prayers and dreams and birth, like all my prayers and birth dreams had come true. And there's this little baby here. And so I remember she didn't cry right away. But then the midwives told my husband to talk to her and both of us to talk to her. And I think she cried once she heard his voice, which was really precious. And then she was on my chest. And just like that, she was born at 4:37 p.m. on a Wednesday, July 15th. And she was 7 pounds, 12 ounces. And we were so blessed that the birth went well. And she was a little bit bigger than my first, but super healthy, rosy pink, and it was just such a wonderful experience for all of us. I remember the midwives just doing everything that they had to do and making sure we were settled, and then telling my mother-in-law that she could bring Hadassah over. And I think by the time we had them bring her over, because we wanted a little time with the baby and to just kind of get settled in, she brought her back just in time for her bedtime, which was perfect because we wanted her to be able to nap where she was comfortable, and we had already planned on asking my mother-in-law to bring her back if I ended up going into the evening for her to sleep in her own bed. And everything just worked out just perfectly. It was so wonderful. Like I said, it was very redeeming. It was encouraging. It was a wonderful, positive birth experience, and I'm so grateful to the Lord for all of the answered prayers. We give him all of the glory, and I healed and recovered really well, and both Selah and I were healthy, and that's all that we can ask for. Okay, sounds good. All right, see you. Okay. Bye, sweet pea. My oldest walked in while I was trying to record a video. She goes, "Are you recording a video?" She's so cute. So one thing I wanted to show you all is this adorable birth cube. My sweet aunt got us a little keepsake with all of Selah's birth details on it, and it has her name, how much she weighed, and the time that she was born, 4:37 p.m., and my favorite verse as well, which is Jeremiah 29:11. So I just love this little cube birth keepsake that she gave us. I cherish it because my memory is already going. But thank you guys so much for watching. Please like this video, and also make sure that you subscribe and turn on your notifications so that you don't miss any other videos like it. I always love to hear from you all, so please feel free to comment down below and leave your feedback on what other videos you would like me to make. And I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I will see you in my next video. Have a great day. Bye guys.